1978. At the Scandinavian Raceway in Anderstorp, Sweden, a British Formula One team arrived with a machine that looked less like a Grand Prix car and more like an engineering experiment that had escaped from the workshop. Brabham was not Ferrari. It did not have Maranello's enormous factory operation or Lotus's revolutionary ground effect machine. And behind the wheel of its strange new car sat Niki Lauda, a hard-headed Austrian who had no interest in pretending that Formula One was anything other than a business of going faster than everyone else. The authorities looked at the enormous fan hanging off the back of the Brabham BT46B and immediately understood what it was doing. They called it a trick. They protested. They warned that the car was throwing debris at rivals and exploiting the rules. What they did not know was that the fan car had already been engineered around the exact wording of the regulations. One race later, it would disappear from Formula One. But not before Niki Lauda drove it to victory by 34.019 seconds. This is the story of the 1978 Brabham BT46B. Before Brabham became associated with world championships and legendary drivers, it was the racing operation of an Australian driver and engineer named Jack Brabham. John Arthur Brabham had arrived in Britain from Australia in the 1950s and built his reputation the hard way. In 1962, he established Motor Racing Developments, the company that would build Brabham racing cars. While Ferrari had an industrial empire behind it, Brabham's early identity came from the British tradition of small workshops, clever engineers, and people who could solve a problem with whatever was sitting on the bench. By the 1970s, Bernie Ecclestone had acquired the team, and the organization was becoming increasingly professional. But it still carried that British constructor mentality. Find the loophole, find the lighter part, find the better idea, then build it. The man responsible for Brabham's strangest idea was Gordon Murray. Murray had joined Brabham in 1969 as a young South African engineer. He was not interested in following established formulas simply because they were established. And in 1978, Formula One was changing at frightening speed. Lotus had discovered that the underside of a Formula One car could become an aerodynamic device. Instead of relying entirely on wings mounted in the air, engineers could shape the floor and side pods so air moving underneath the car created low pressure, pulling the chassis toward the track. Lotus had the advantage. Brabham needed an answer. What Murray eventually produced looked almost absurd. The original Brabham BT46 was built around a powerful but awkward engine. Behind the driver sat Alfa Romeo's 3.0-litre flat 12 cylinders arranged in two banks lying opposite one another, producing power smoothly and allowing the engine to sit low in the chassis. The Alfa was powerful. It was also enormous, and that created Murray's problem. Lotus was using carefully shaped tunnels underneath its cars to create ground effect, but the Brabham's Alfa Romeo engine occupied much of the space that Murray needed for clean airflow. Murray tried something unconventional. The BT46 used surface radiators, thin cooling panels mounted along the sides of the monocoque, rather than one large radiator at the front. On paper, it was elegant. In reality, the car overheated. The solution was not elegant. It was crude, and it would eventually become one of the most notorious machines in Formula One history. According to Murray's later account, the answer came from an idea associated with Brabham engineer David North: use a fan to extract air from beneath the car. If the fan could pull air out from underneath the chassis, it could create low pressure beneath the car. Low pressure meant the car was effectively being sucked toward the ground. And unlike a normal wing, the system could generate its aerodynamic effect even when the car was moving slowly. That was the key. The Lotus system needed speed. Murray's system needed a fan. Murray moved a large water radiator to a horizontal position above the engine. The radiator sat flat, and a large fan was mounted at the rear of the car and driven mechanically from the gearbox. The fan's official job was simple: cooling. Air would be pulled through the radiator and expelled from the rear. That gave Brabham a perfectly legitimate explanation for having a giant rotating device attached to the back of a Grand Prix car. But the fan did something else. It sucked air from underneath the car. The underside was sealed with flexible skirts, helping prevent outside air from rushing underneath and destroying the pressure difference. If you place a suction device beneath a sealed object, the pressure underneath falls. The surrounding atmosphere then pushes the object downward. The BT46B turned that basic principle into an aerodynamic system. Murray did not need a giant wing. He did not need to wait for the car to reach high speed. The fan was generating the pressure difference directly. The regulations created the opening. The rules stated that an aerodynamic device whose primary function was aerodynamic influence had to remain fixed relative to the sprung mass of the car. Murray's argument was brutally simple. The fan's primary function was cooling. The aerodynamic benefit was secondary. The technical authorities eventually brought an anemometer to the factory. The device measured airflow. Murray later recalled that more than 55% of the airflow was going through the radiator. That was enough. The technical authorities confirmed that the car was legal under the rules as written, while warning that the loophole would be closed for 1979. The BT46B did not arrive at Anderstorp as a single secret prototype. Brabham brought two. Niki Lauda drove chassis BT46 sixths. John Watson drove BT46 quarters. The Swedish Grand Prix was scheduled for June 17, 1978, and Brabham had a problem. If the car was genuinely as fast as Murray believed, showing its full performance in qualifying would immediately expose what the team had built. So the team held back. Lauda qualified third. Watson was second. Mario Andretti put his Lotus on pole. The numbers looked respectable. They did not look revolutionary. That was exactly what Brabham wanted. According to later accounts, Ecclestone instructed the drivers not to reveal the car's full potential during qualifying. The other teams were already furious. The BT46B looked like a loophole with wheels. Lotus had spent years developing ground effect aerodynamics. Colin Chapman had built an entire competitive philosophy around controlling airflow beneath the car. Now Brabham had arrived with a giant fan and a simpler solution. While Lotus was trying to make the floor itself generate suction, Brabham had brought a vacuum cleaner. And the fan did not care whether the car was traveling quickly or slowly. The BT46B's most important component was also the easiest to misunderstand. It was not simply a giant fan attached to the rear. The entire car had been designed around it. The engine bay was enclosed. The radiator was mounted horizontally above the Alfa Romeo Flat 12. The fan was connected mechanically to the gearbox, so engine speed determined how aggressively the system worked. And the result was an aerodynamic system that continuously extracted air from beneath the car. The difference between this and a conventional wing was fundamental. A wing works by accelerating airflow around a surface and producing a pressure difference. The BT46B created pressure difference directly underneath the chassis. It was crude but effective. And because the fan was powered mechanically, the aerodynamic load did not simply disappear when the car slowed down. That gave Lauda something Formula One drivers desperately wanted in 1978: grip. More grip meant higher cornering speeds. It meant later braking. It meant the driver could attack corners where other cars had to compromise. Gordon Murray later explained that he had not been trying to hide the system. He had simply designed it so the cooling function genuinely represented more than half of the airflow. That distinction mattered, because legally, the BT46B was not a banned car when it appeared. It was a legal car exploiting a loophole. Niki Lauda was not the kind of driver who needed theatrical machinery to impress people. He was methodical, analytical, hard. The Austrian had already won the 1975 World Championship with Ferrari and was one of the most technically minded drivers of his generation. And the BT46B gave him something unusual. Lauda started third, Andretti started first, Watson started second. When the race began, Andretti led, Lauda followed. The BT46B did not immediately blast into the distance. Brabham had no reason to frighten everyone before the race had settled. For the opening 38 laps, Andretti remained ahead. Then, everything changed. On lap 39, Andretti's Lotus encountered oil from Jean-Pierre Jabouille's Renault, and Lauda was able to take the lead. The Lotus had been quick. The Brabham was relentless. Once Lauda reached the front, the fan car began to demonstrate what Murray had created. He did not need to protect the tires by sacrificing corner speed. He did not need to manage the aerodynamic balance in the same way as a conventional car. The fan kept working, lap after lap. The field disappeared behind him. Andretti eventually retired with an engine failure on lap 47. Lauda now had clear track, and the gap began to grow. Riccardo Patrese, driving the Arrows FA1, moved into second. Ronnie Peterson was third in the Lotus 79. The two were separated by only 0.086 seconds at the finish. But Lauda was somewhere else entirely. Lauda completed all 70 laps in 1 hour, 41 minutes and 0.606 seconds. Patrese finished second. The official gap was 34.019 seconds. The reactions were immediate. Rival teams protested. Mario Andretti complained about debris being thrown by the fan. Gordon Murray later rejected the accusation, insisting that the fan car was legal. Everyone could see what happened when the fan was allowed to work for an entire Grand Prix. Lauda had won by more than half a minute, and he had done it against the leading Lotus machinery of the ground effect era. The Brabham had won its first race. It had also won its last. After the Swedish Grand Prix, the BT46B was placed under scrutiny. This is where the popular version of the story often becomes inaccurate. The fan car was not simply declared illegal the moment it crossed the finish line. The technical authorities investigated the car. They measured the airflow, they examined the cooling system, and the conclusion was extraordinary. Under the wording of the 1978 regulations, the car was legal. Murray later recalled receiving a letter confirming that Brabham could continue using the fan car for the remainder of the 1978 season. But there was a catch. The rules would be changed. The loophole would be closed for 1979. So technically, Brabham had a legal advantage. Politically, it had become a disaster. Colin Chapman and other constructors were furious. The BT46B threatened to change the competitive order overnight. Lotus had developed ground effect into its central technical weapon. Brabham had found a different route to the same destination. Gordon Murray later said Bernie Ecclestone came to him and asked him to withdraw the car because the other constructors were putting enormous pressure on him and the Formula One Constructors Association was at risk. This was the human side of the machine. Murray had spent months solving an engineering problem. He had found the loophole. He had proven it. Then politics took it away. For Brabham, the decision was brutal. They had built something that worked. They had entered it in one World Championship race. It had won. And the technical authorities had confirmed that the machine was legal. Yet Bernie Ecclestone decided the political cost was too high. The Formula One Constructors Association was becoming increasingly important. Ecclestone was building his influence within that group. If Brabham continued racing the fan car, rival teams could walk away. The BT46B was therefore withdrawn, not because it had failed, because it had succeeded too well. That distinction is everything. The car had not been defeated by Ferrari. It had not been beaten by Lotus. It had not broken its engine. It was removed because the people running the sport had decided that allowing the loophole to continue was politically unacceptable. The establishment had spent the weekend trying to prove that the fan car was unfair. Instead, the investigation confirmed that it was legal, so they changed the future rules, and Brabham voluntarily stopped using the machine. June 17, 1978. Anderstorp. 70 laps. The Swedish Grand Prix began with Mario Andretti on pole, John Watson alongside him, and Niki Lauda starting third. The Brabham BT46B did not look like the future. A large, flat 12 engine behind the driver, a radiator sitting horizontally above it, a giant fan hanging off the rear. But once the race started, the strange machine began doing exactly what Gordon Murray had designed it to do. Andretti led. Lauda followed. For 38 laps, the Lotus remained in front. Then Andretti's advantage disappeared. Oil from Jabouille's Renault created a problem, and Lauda moved ahead on lap 39. From that moment, the race became a demonstration. The BT46B simply pulled away. Andretti's Lotus eventually retired with an engine failure. Lauda continued. Patrese moved into second. Peterson followed. The Arrows and Lotus fought each other, while the Brabham disappeared into the distance. By the finish, Lauda had completed 70 laps. Patrese was second, 34.019 seconds behind. The difference between first and second was more than half a minute. But the number that mattered most was one. One race, one victory, one appearance for the BT46B in Formula One competition. Niki Lauda had won his first race of the 1978 season in a car that would never compete in another Grand Prix. The machine's record was perfect. One start, one win, no defeat. It simply vanished. That is why the BT46B became more than another clever racing car. It became a lesson in what happens when engineers are allowed to attack the wording of a rule instead of the spirit behind it. The car was never officially banned immediately after Sweden. The regulations were changed to close the loophole, while Brabham withdrew the car voluntarily. But the effect was the same. The fan car was finished. And the technology did not disappear with it. Gordon Murray carried the philosophy of radical aerodynamic efficiency through the rest of his career. He later became responsible for some of the most influential racing and road car designs of the modern era, including the McLaren F1. The fan concept itself also returned decades later. Murray's later T.50S Niki Lauda even used a rear fan as part of its aerodynamic system, producing enormous downforce in a completely different technological environment. The BT46B also belongs to the larger story of ground effect. Lotus had pioneered the concept. Brabham showed that it could be attacked from another direction. Then Formula One regulated the idea. Years later, ground effect aerodynamics returned to Formula One in a much more sophisticated form, with modern teams using shaped floors, tunnels, and diffusers to control airflow underneath the car. The names changed. Lotus became history. Brabham disappeared from the front of Formula One. McLaren, Williams, Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes would later build their own eras of aerodynamic dominance. But the principle remained. Control the air beneath the car, and you control how hard it can attack the track. What Gordon Murray understood in 1978 was that the rules did not always tell an engineer what a car could do. Sometimes they only told him what the car could not do. The BT46B exploited the space between those two statements. They saw a fan. Murray saw a vacuum. They saw a cooling device. He saw downforce. They saw a loophole. He saw a racing car. They called it controversial. Then it won. They tried to stop it, and ultimately they did. But not before Niki Lauda drove the strange British machine across the finish line 34.019 seconds ahead of the next car. The BT46B never won another race because it was never allowed to race again. That is its final record. The fan car won the only Formula One Grand Prix it entered. No other Brabham fan car followed it to another victory, and no other Formula One car has ever repeated that exact combination of a mechanically driven rear fan, primary cooling justification, and single-race World Championship victory. The machine was born from a failed cooling system. It was built around a difficult Alfa Romeo engine. It was designed by a British engineer who refused to accept that Lotus had already solved the aerodynamic problem. It was driven by a world champion who understood immediately what its grip meant. And it was sacrificed by a team owner who understood that winning was not the only game being played in Formula One. The establishment laughed at the strange Brabham right up until the moment it won. Then the rules changed, and the fan disappeared. If you enjoyed this story, there are plenty more like it on the channel. Hit subscribe, and I will make it worth your time.